School. SCHOOL is a place where we're meant to learn, develop and prepare us for the future. A place where we're meant to enjoy ourselves, socialise, but most importantly, get them important grades that lead us on to getting a job. However, what's the one thing that is missing in school? You know, you've got health. You know, they take care of you physically. You know, you've got the idea that they teach you maths, they teach you how to write English. But what about this? What about your brain? How are people meant to progress in life in one society where pressures are higher than ever if schools don't teach you the basics of how to manage your mental health? One of the most important pieces of health, and I can prove that by the fact that suicide is the third leading cause of death in the UK. Actually, from 10 to 24 years of age, over 90% of people either think or commit suicide. So, is school teaching us the right things? Is school doing what it should be doing? Well, today, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go over everything about the school system. And if it matches what I personally think we should have in terms of mental health. Is school providing us the correct professional care for our mental health? And are we going into the world in one society knowing how to manage this? Let's find out in today's video. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Focus the Future. I hope you're having an amazing day. I sure am. If you're watching this and you're new here, welcome aboard. On this channel, I provide you guys with mental health advice, informational videos, and videos just like this one. So if you like what you're seeing, if this looks interesting to you, if you like the idea of finding out more mental health advice, then stay tuned and make sure you guys are hitting that subscribe button to join our amazing community. Anyway, today's video is obviously about, you know, the school system and if it's taking care of our mental health. So if you're not interested in any of that, please use the card above to go and find out a bit more about me. Now, if you don't know already, I suffer with anxiety, and as a person who has anxiety, I do require a lot of support from adults, and I've had to go through counselling for the majority of my life. So I'm pretty aware of how important mental health is in teenagers. And also, let's remember that I studied psychology and wellbeing for 2 years straight in my own time. So I know what I'm talking about. And from my own personal experiences of the school system and how they deal with mental health, I'm generally not that impressed. And to be honest, it's not great if I'm being fair. The school system just doesn't teach you what you need to know to be able to manage anxiety, depression, and all these other different things. And even if you don't suffer from a mental health issue, it doesn't really teach you how to deal with the basics of distress, anxiety, and other forms of basic emotions that we feel. And for some people, this can lead to overruling mental health issues and can lead to a much worse future in due time. Now, let's remember, during the time you are going through secondary school, you are most vulnerable to coming down with mental health issues. You are most vulnerable to having things leashed at you that could cause you mental health problems. And this is during your adolescent stage, the stage where your brain, your body is developing at a rapid rate. And a lot of the time, school doesn't teach us the basics of what we need to know to be able to deal with the emotions, the hormones, the stress that comes up during the peak moments of our brain developing. And that can lead to a rapid deterioration in mental health, stability, and our general overall educational success. We don't get taught in lessons about depression, about anxiety, about stress, about how to manage emotions, about what emotions are, about how to be sympathetic. We just don't get taught these things, and to be honest, a lot of people just guess how to deal with it and fail miserably, as the statistic proves about the third leading cause of death is suicide. Now, I get it, okay? Schools are not stupid, adults are not stupid, the world isn't stupid, and as the years have gone on, the education system has developed. You know, they've introduced counselling, they've introduced mentors, and schools do provide some form of mental health support. But they probably only give you that mental health support once you've already reached the peak point of your mental health problems, once you've already got depression, once you've already got anxiety, and once you're already on the way to committing suicide. And that is not good enough. Teachers are not trained in how to deal with these things, and to be honest, even if they are in some schools, the training is just not significant enough. And I can tell you that because the school I go to tells us that their teachers are trained in these things, but in reality these teachers have got no clue what they're doing. And when I've been upset in lesson, these teachers literally just panic and think the world's about to end. School is meant to make us happy, to make us feel like we are achieving and progressing in something. But most teenagers come home and say that the most they feel from school and the most they've learnt from school is how depressing life truly is, and the fact that in reality they haven't really learned anything. Kids are pressured and literally tormented to revise and to pass these tests, which are literally a battle to receive an A, so you are passed into society as a eligible human being that can then go and get a job. Teachers ram into your heads that if you don't get GCSEs, you're not going to get a good job and you're going to fail. But they don't ever motivate you to achieve. The most they do is stick a book in your face and hope you write the correct things off the board. And is that healthy? 100% not. That is not how kids should be developed to any degree. And let's remember that school teachers and the school system in general spends more time with a child than their parents will on average a day. Now, let's just take that into consideration. These kids are chucked into classrooms full of all these random strangers with no social skills whatsoever, having no idea what they're walking into. And to be fair with you, the only time these teachers will actually pull you up about you being social is if it reaches the point where you are literally beating the living craps out of each other. And if I'm honest, it's kind of depressing that most kids will walk away from school, even if they've got A stars, even if they've got, you know, all the things they could want from their educational life and childhood. They'll walk away from that school having no clue what they want to do with their lives and having no clue to even how to apply to a job. And more importantly, even know what a contract is. Now, because I am a mental health enthusiast and I talk about mental health all the time, I seem to just have a beam about me and I seem to attract people who also have mental health issues. And if I'm honest, it's quite daunting how many people out there who are literally sitting there suffering and on the edge of suicide. So how can schools improve? How can schools make sure they are developing children to a standard that is actually acceptable, and so these kids walk into their futures with their head held high, knowing that they're at least going somewhere? Now, the first thing is teaching them the basics. In primary school, you obviously learn the basics of socialising. You know, they stick you in rooms full of kids on purpose to get you to socialise, so you pick up the skills needed to be able to socialise. The simple thing of even being able to share a chocolate bar is a stage in emotional development. But once you go into secondary school, different types of things should start to come in. We should have lessons on the basics of hormones, on the basics of how to manage emotions. You know, the fact that we can accept that we are sad and we shouldn't have to be happy all the time, as some kids literally believe. And the basics of that should all be taught in year 7. So a kid doesn't go into year 8 and 9, and the minute he gets upset, he thinks the world's about to collapse around him. Most kids haven't got a clue less of how to manage their emotions, or even how to bloody, make sure that they can get themselves back on the right track. And that leads into therapy and just literally puts pressure on the NHS to deal with a bunch of kids who, quite frankly, just haven't been developed correctly. Such simple lessons as how to manage emotions, such simple things as how to draw a little emotional graph and plot how you feel and then write down how to deal with it, could save the NHS absolutely millions. Teaching kids what anxiety is, what depression is, what all these other mental illnesses are, could save the NHS millions. Providing teachers training that is actually useful to them. I mean, they don't need to be a trained counsellor to be a teacher, but teaching them what to do if children are upset and teaching them how to talk to a child correctly. And this shouldn't just be taught to just standard teachers. Supply teachers should be taught this as well. And the biggest thing is teachers need to get into their little tiny heads that our emotional health is more important than any A grade you will ever give me. Remember that, kids. Because quite frankly, if I can't manage this and I end up in a psychiatric ward, I ain't got no chances of getting a job. Now, some schools are already on the way to doing this. For example, in our school, they're starting to introduce this very iffy system of what we call building learning power and whatever the other one is. Now, the lessons that we get taught in form are not great, and I'm not going to lie, half of them, the kids are just like, what the heck are you teaching me? Because they're not structured very well. But it's one step in a barrel, I would say. It's one step forward from what they used to do, which was nothing. So at least we can sort of sit here and say to ourselves that schools are making some progress. So that's one way. Teaching kids about depression, anxiety, how to manage their emotions, and providing teachers extensive training on how to deal with these things. The next thing is punishing kids differently. Currently, the way most schools punish kids is by giving them detentions, isolating them, or calling mummy and being like, "Mummy, can you solve our issues for us? Because we as a school can't be bothered to do it for you." The kid goes home to mummy, mummy shouts at them a bit and gives them a bit of a lecture, and then lets them get on with their life, not realising that that kid really hasn't learnt nothing. All he's learnt is that mummy's a bit shouty and the school are just snitches. They rely on the rule of pressure and pure emotional manipulation to stop them doing things that are wrong. But realistically, you're not actually teaching the kid that what they just did is actually wrong and how to fix it. You're just emotionally manipulating them to not do it again. Because they're not going to do it again because they know they're just going to get shouted at. And that's no way of educating anyone. Like, how the heck is sitting a kid in a room for an hour because they threw a pencil across a classroom gonna teach them anything? How the heck is sitting a kid in a room for an hour because they didn't do their homework gonna teach them anything? I mean, in our school now, they get you to fill out these silly little forms that ask you to put why you got a detention and what you can do to fix it, and they get this teacher to walk around asking you questions about it. But quite frankly, it's just the biggest bunch of bollocks I've ever seen. I actually sat in detention one time and literally took the piss out of this form. It was that bad. Punishing a child through getting them to sit somewhere, getting them to be isolated from all the other children, is not a punishment. And it's something I've learned, and I think it's something society is quickly becoming to learn. It doesn't teach a kid anything. All it does is emotionally manipulate them to not do it again, because they know that they're going to get a slap on the wrist, or they're going to get put in isolation or detention. And that's just straight up emotional manipulation. They don't understand the prospect of what they did is wrong, why it was wrong, or why they shouldn't do it, or they just generally sit there in an absolute radical cycle of, I'm going to do this again because it's funny. But there is actually no cure to what the heck they've just done. A kid doing something wrong is a bit more than just they wanted to cause mischief or make a teacher's day a bad one. It's normally got a lot to do with boredom, it's also got a lot to do with begging for attention, or they're literally asking for help. It's not normally just because they wanted to piss off the teacher. Or they generally didn't know what they did was wrong and it was a complete and utter accident. The actual way you should punish a child, if there is any punishment in itself, is explaining to them what they did is wrong, explaining them how they can fix it properly, asking if they want support, and actually digging a bit deeper than just the front wall of the problem and sitting them in a room. Yeah, obviously you can sit them in a room afterwards and, tell them that they've got to stay there for an hour, but at least explain to them why what they did is wrong and how they can fix it. Another way, the third way schools can improve their mental health support and well-being systems, which is currently a load of garbage, is actually teaching kids how to get jobs, how to make good CVs, and, actually bringing out young people's skills and passions rather than getting them to all do the same route. Now, I always have said to myself that there's two types of people in society. There are people that go for the standard 9-to-5 job route and sit there on their asses hoping for a miracle to happen because that's what school taught them to do. And then there's these kids who are a bit more ambitious and go sideways and take their own route in life. Now, the difference between these two types of people is one is normally extremely successful with a lot of money, or even if they're not successful, they actually learn a lot about life and actually get on with something. And then the other ones just sit there and hope for a miracle, normally end up with depression, anxiety, or even commit suicide, and sit there and have arguments with their wife all day about who ate the last cookie. We should be bringing skills, talents and passions out of kids. We should be allowing children to explore and work out what they actually want to be, rather than teaching them algebra which they're never going to use again, and instead of just using intelligence manipulation techniques to make sure that they can solve problems, so we know when a car comes flying towards them in the street, they're not just going to stand there. Which is pretty much what algebra does. It just proves that if a car was flying towards you, you wouldn't just stand there. Because if you can solve algebra, you're not that stupid. So, I've done my rant today, and I've wanted to make this video for a very long time, and I've finally plucked up the courage to sit in front of a camera and rant about these things. Because I'm not gonna lie, if we even did one of the tips that I've just given, which is not just suggested by me, I will link a few videos down in the description saying the exact same thing, we'd probably solve a lot of the world's problems. Because what we've got to remember is we are developing the next generation of people. And the way a lot of the world's problems could be solved is by teaching these kids that doing some of the things that we've done in society is gonna end up in the same thing that we're in. So if we develop kids a bit better, maybe they won't go on to make the same stupid mistakes that society makes today. Anyway guys, I hope you've enjoyed this rant video. Literally what this is, it's just me giving my advice about the education system and me expressing to you how actually shit it is. Anyway guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video and I will catch all you dudes next time.